I think it's inevitable. In fact, I think we've already seen states recognize that digital currencies will be the next stage of money. Because they're trying to create competitors now, effectively to Bitcoin. And I think they're not really hiding the fact that it's that so-called central bank digital currencies, which is just a rebranded version of fiat currencies, which don't have any really desirable properties for the public at large, beyond the government being able to more effectively disperse sort of stimulus payments. But that unfortunately means, and I think a lot of people don't have the financial sophistication to realize, that actually means they are simply taxing you in a new way, because that stimulus payment is debasing the value of the currency at large. Digital currency in the general sense, cryptocurrency in the general sense, does not solve the problem of like inflation and hidden taxes in that way. Bitcoin, in a large way, makes it more predictable in that it has a predictable low rate of inflation, which is constantly decreasing. But as you say, the problem when we talk about everybody moving to digital currencies, we know the Bitcoin network doesn't support throughput. Unfortunately, the Bitcoin network as it exists does not provide the privacy protections really necessary for these kind of transactions at scale. And I think it should, and it could, and it's clear to me that the developers realize this should be done for whatever reason. However, when we're talking about Bitcoin improvement proposals, they haven't actually moved to do this, which is puzzling to me because now they've had years to do it. Mm-hmm. When we talk about this, though, you know, the inevitability of this transformation towards digital currency, I'm not picking winners and losers. I don't have a horse or care or concern as to who wins this beyond, I think, what the world needs, what we need, is a truly independent means of enabling private transactions. If that's Bitcoin, great, fabulous. I use Bitcoin. I've used Bitcoin before. I'll continue to use Bitcoin. But it's very difficult for me to use Bitcoin. And yet, that is a huge improvement over credit cards, which I cannot use because those networks are not even pseudonymous in the way that, for example, a Bitcoin transaction would be. So this is to say that, you know, cryptocurrency has, I think at this point, amongst the development community, the academic community, pretty well understood flaws. But I don't think there's any reason to say that they can't be resolved. If we're talking off-chain transactions, cross-chain transactions, you know, there are a lot of groups working on this. My big question is, why are you guys taking so long?
Right.
The Bitcoin protocol, the peer-to-peer electronic cash system, is the idea that we can send these payments to anyone permissionlessly. And this is true if it's in your wallet. But how do people fill their wallets? They get it through exchanges. And these guys are imposing permissioning steps that are intermediary to the transaction. And the only way to defeat that is to allow some kind of purification step, right? Where we remove all of the taint, we remove all of the identification, we remove all of the cruft that's being imposed at this external level, this external layer in the system, and return it to this idea that we can have direct trade, we can have direct commerce, we can have direct interaction with anyone, anywhere, anytime. Until we recognize that and realize that and enforce that, or at least provide opportunity through the protocol level, crypto hasn't gotten to where it needs to be. Surveillance has become easier. The barriers to performing surveillance at scale have evolved with the advance of technology. We actually still believe things like the idea that cash is anonymous, and that's no longer actually true. Fun little exercise for anybody at home who's doing this. You know those cash counters that you see at like the bank, you know, they can put like a stack of money and it's like, and it pulls it through and it says, these are, you know, of these bills, or these are 30 of these bills, or whatever. Like, you can sort it and do all kinds of things. if you make a deposit, if you ever actually go into a bank anymore, which in a lot of you don't. But maybe, you're a drug dealer, go buy your own cash counter. Those cash counters now, they actually scan serial number of every bill. And they keep a database of every serial of every bill that they scan, even when they're going by, 130 seconds. And guess what those cash counters are now? Yeah, they're networked, right? And so this is the thing. The same thing is happening to our postal mail. The USPS in the United States, they photograph addressing information for every piece of mail now they process. And these are just the challenges that we face, right? They see it as metadata. Like maybe they don't know what you spent that money on, but they know that that cash was deposited by this person at this bank, eventually, this business. And the last time that the system writ large saw this bill was over in this state or that, and it was withdrawn by this person at that time. And we have no idea how the federal government is using these programs. We have no idea how the banks are using these programs to perform sort of surveillance and link analysis of how sort of financial flows occur. But then, as you say, then we get cryptocurrency. Now, cryptocurrency, and by this I'm just going to say Bitcoin, is really failing comprehensively, terribly on the privacy angle. And I've said this again, and people are like, oh, Taproot, look at what Taproot actually does. Taproot does not fix Bitcoin's privacy problem. And there's some arguments that it makes it worse by this sort of fragmented address space, making a forensic sort of flow analysis easier because you can spend a wallet is using an ancient address. They sent a payment to this new person with a new form of address, right? But the change address went back to the old one. So even though there's one input, two outputs, you can tell one was a payment and one was a sort of a refund or a change event. Shouldn't be like that. There's no reason for it to happen. We see so many different privacy coins. Zcash, I have said repeatedly, really does the best in this space with their shielded transactions. The criticism is that these transactions don't occur by default, which is valid. In my opinion, they should happen by default. There are other cryptocurrencies like Monero, privacy coin, which is having a lot of trouble being listed on exchanges broadly, which has sort of privacy by default, but it's a lower measure of privacy. They're just playing a shell game. And those shell games really don't last forever, particularly as technology does better and better. And we haven't seen legally tested in the kind of way that we want to see it done. But they're both great projects. And there are many, many other privacy coins out there. But like you said, we see exchanges starting to privacy. That's scary. The way that you fix this, the way that you normalize this, is you make Bitcoin private, right? I mean, the main chain. I'm not talking about putting a layer 2. I'm not saying lightning shenanigans, right? You have to make the idea cryptocurrency is private by design. And once you normalize that, it's fait accompli. And it's really frustrating, I think, for a lot of people in space that the core development team for Bitcoin has not prioritized this, because the longer they wait, the more obstacles are going to be put in place to prevent that from being the case. Right now, Bitcoin really can't be delisted by exchanges. And the sooner we take advantage of that, the better off we will be. A lot of this flew out of September 11th with counterterrorism financing. And counterterrorism financing at Bank of America, we want terrorists to be sending financial flows over Bank of America, because then we know what they're doing. We know who it's going to. We can knock on their door and we can blow up their house, right? The way we deal with these things is really crazy, because we structured these new policies in a panic. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to jump in there, but I think it's important. Actually, maybe you could tell us a little bit more about that. When did these things just start to change from this old paradigm things were in terms of what the government could get from banks and what they can get now? Problem with the cryptocurrency space at the largest scale today is the people who make these decisions have the biggest stake in the system. And the system has benefited from the fact that it has not been regulated out of existence, or there's no attempt to regulate it out of existence. Currently, by the structures exists today. And so they have become fantastically wealthy. And this puts a lot on the line, right? I'm not saying they have no principles. I'm not